My name is Iris Evans and I'm 34 years old. 8 years ago, my husband died, and I sent my daughter to live with my mother. Every year, I wired $45,000, $360,000 total. So my little girl would be fed, clothed, and loved. Then, on her 8th birthday, my daughter tugged my sleeve and whispered 5 words that changed everything. Just watch her, you'll see. What I discovered when I followed my mother terrified me. The money was gone. My daughter was hungry, and the woman I trusted most in this world had been filing paperwork to take my child away from me for good. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Let me take you back 8 years, to the absolute darkest week of my life. The week I buried my husband, Mason, and made a single desperate decision that nearly cost me my baby girl. Mason died on a Wednesday. He was electrocuted at a construction site outside Lexington when a faulty breaker box sent 220 volts of electricity through his arms. He was only 29 years old. Our daughter Layla was just 5 months old. I was 26, sitting in the wooden rocking chair he had built for us with his own hands, nursing our baby, when 2 men in hard hats knocked on the front door. I don't remember the exact words they said. My brain blocked them out. I only remember Layla crying because I was suddenly squeezing her too tightly. I was 26. I was supposed to be building a life, not burying one. The life insurance paid out $150,000. It sounds like a lot of money until you sit at a kitchen table and divide it by the rest of your life. But the insurance didn't cover the hidden nightmares. Mason had a massive legal debt from a failed business venture he had kept completely secret, trying to protect me. Overnight, I owed over $80,000. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my lungs. I was drowning before I even learned how to swim. I had just finished my nursing program. I was top of my class wearing my shiny new pin, but I had 0 actual experience. No hospital in our small county was hiring. The closest job opening was at a rough community hospital in Richmond, 3 hours north. It was the night shift. 10-hour rotations, 5 nights a week. I couldn't bring a 5-month-old infant to Richmond. I had no family there. There was no daycare on Earth that ran from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., and I had no one to call if an emergency kept me late. I was entirely trapped. My mother drove down the day after the funeral. She held a sleeping Layla on the front porch while I packed my life into cardboard boxes. And right then, she said the exact words my shattered heart needed to hear. "Bring Layla to me," she whispered softly. "You go work. I'll take care of her like she's my own." She brushed my hair behind my ear, just the way she did when I was a little girl, and added something I would replay in my head 1,000 times. "You don't need to worry about money for Layla. Just send what you can." So I did it. I handed my tiny, fragile daughter over to my mother, got into my car, and drove 3 hours through the freezing rain. "It's just temporary," I told myself, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "Just until I catch up." 8 years later, I was still telling myself that lie, and my mother had been banking on it. That first year almost destroyed me. Not with a loud crash, but in the silent, creeping way things break when nobody is watching. I worked 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. I slept from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon in a cramped studio apartment that constantly smelled like wet mildew and cheap takeout. I paid off Mason's massive debt with every extra penny I earned. I was literally starving myself so my daughter would never have to. Every single dollar I didn't absolutely need went straight home. $3,750 a month, wired to my mother's bank account on the first of the month, like clockwork. That was $45,000 a year. I survived on dry peanut butter sandwiches and whatever hospital cafeteria leftovers they were going to throw away. I refused to buy new scrubs until the old ones literally split at the seams. One night in my 4th year, a 6-year-old girl was rushed into my ER. Her ribs were poking through her skin. Her eyes were sunken into dark circles. She was severely undernourished. I took one look at her and had a full-blown panic attack right there in the trauma bay. I ran and locked myself in the staff bathroom. My hands shook violently, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird, and I called my mother at 3 a.m. She answered with a soft, sleepy chuckle. "Oh, Iris, calm down. Layla just had seconds of roast chicken and fell asleep hugging her teddy bear." I let out a shaky breath. I believed her, because if I didn't believe her, my mind would have completely shattered. Every night before my shift, I FaceTimed my baby. I watched her learn to walk on a screen. I heard her learn to talk on a screen. She learned to say mama into a glowing piece of glass because that was the only place she ever saw my face. My mother always held the phone and smiled warmly. Behind them, the living room was spotless. Layla wore a bright pink onesie I didn't recognize, looking brand new. "She's doing great, honey," Mom would say. "We went to the park today, had ice cream after." She texted me photos constantly. Layla at the playground. Layla in a stroller at the grocery store. Layla laughing at something off camera. Those pictures were my oxygen. They arrived every few days, just enough to keep my crushing mother's guilt at a low simmer instead of a boiling scream. I drove down to visit 3 times a month, 3 hours down on a Thursday morning, completely exhausted, running purely on caffeine and desperation. I got 48 hours to hold my child. Then 3 hours back on Saturday night, I'd walk into that house, and Layla would immediately reach her little arms out for me. For those 48 hours, the universe made sense. I honestly thought our system was working. My mother made absolutely sure I thought that. Looking back now, I should have noticed the truth in year 3, but I didn't because my mother was a master at knowing exactly what to put on a stage and what to hide in the dark. The very first crack was small enough for my tired brain to explain away. I came home on a Thursday in October. Layla was 20 months old, toddling around the kitchen. She was wearing a pair of corduroy overalls I had seen 4 visits ago. The knees were heavily stained with dirt. One shoulder strap was held together with a safety pin because the button had ripped off. "Mom, didn't you get her fall clothes?" I asked, confused. "I sent extra money last month." She didn't even blink while washing the dishes. "Oh, she grows so fast. I haven't had time to shop. You know how it is." I felt a twinge of guilt. I left $600 in raw cash on the kitchen counter with a sticky note explicitly for Layla's winter clothes. But when I came back 5 agonizing weeks later, Layla was running around in those exact same stained, safety-pinned overalls. The $600 cash was completely gone, and looking back, that was the exact moment the shadow fell over my life. The moment I should have realized my daughter was living with a monster. That same weekend, a massive truck I had never seen before pulled into the dusty gravel driveway. It was shiny charcoal gray with gleaming chrome running boards. My older brother, Kyle, stepped out looking like he was arriving at a VIP tailgate party. "Kyle got a new truck," my mother announced, wiping her wet hands on a dish towel without even looking up from the sink. "He's doing better, found a good job." Kyle swaggered inside, yanked open the fridge, grabbed a cold beer, and headed straight for the couch. He didn't say hello to me. He didn't even glance at little Layla playing on the floor. When he finally needed something, he just leaned his head into the kitchen doorway. "Ma, you got any cash? I gotta fill up." She didn't hesitate for a single second. She opened her purse and handed him 3 crisp $100 bills like it was absolutely nothing. Like buying a loaf of bread. I work 50 hours a week on my aching feet, cleaning up blood, and he just breathes and gets paid. He left without a word to either of us. I stood frozen at the counter, washing Layla's plastic sippy cup, and noticed the shelves above the stove. There were far fewer cans than my last visit. The fruit bowl was completely empty, but before my exhausted brain could process those terrifying numbers, something else caught my eye. A thick, official-looking envelope resting near the microwave, stamped with the heavy seal of the county courthouse. My mother lunged forward and snatched it up. "Just junk mail, honey," she said smoothly, sliding it deep into her apron pocket and quickly changing the subject. By year 4, the invisible walls my mother had built around my daughter's world started closing in on my chest. Not brick walls, the kind made of redirected phone calls, forged papers, and gentle deflections. I sat in my sweltering car outside the Richmond hospital one afternoon, fighting sleep, and called Layla's preschool to ask about her progress report. The cheerful receptionist put me on hold. When she came back, her tone was tight and apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have Mrs. Dunn listed as the sole primary contact. She requested we direct all communication strictly through her." I stared blindly at my steering wheel. I am her mother. I birthed her. I called my mom immediately, my pulse racing. "Mom, why does the school only have your information?" "I just didn't want them bothering you at work, sweetie," she cooed, her voice dripping with fake honey. "You need your sleep. You work so incredibly hard." "I'd like to be on the contact list too," I pushed back. "Of course, I'll take care of it today." She never did. What I didn't know then was that my mother had actually created a fake email address and bought a burner phone under my name. Every time the school or the doctor needed Iris Evans, Linda answered the call. She intercepted every permission slip, forged my signature, and carefully built a ghost version of me. A version that legally abandoned my child. She was systematically erasing me from my own daughter's life, document by document. I didn't know the name of Layla's pediatrician. I didn't know if she had a best friend, a favorite teacher, or a fear of the dark. Every time I begged for specifics, my mother had a warm, smooth answer ready to stop my next question. She's doing wonderful. The doctor says she's perfect. And if I pushed harder, the warmth in her voice would shift into something sharp and cold. You trust me, don't you? I raised you. It was never a question. It was a heavy iron gate slamming shut. I didn't know it yet, but she had already hired a lawyer, not for Layla's protection, for her own. Year 5, a suffocating hot Sunday in August. I pulled into the driveway after my usual brutal commute and saw a woman next door watering her hydrangeas. Silver hair, wide sun hat, gardening gloves up to her elbows. She looked over and suddenly stopped mid-spray. You must be Iris, she called out. Yes, ma'am. I'm Nora Kent. I've been living next to your mama for about 4 years now. She set down the green hose and walked slowly to the fence line. Her eyes moved over my pale, tired face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. How's Layla doing, sweetheart? The question didn't sound like polite small talk. It sounded heavy with real, deep fear. She's great, I smiled automatically. Mom takes good care of her. Nora held my gaze one beat too long. Your mother told us you were struggling, Nora said carefully, testing the dangerous waters. She said you had a terrible drug problem after Mason passed. Said you were unstable and couldn't be trusted near the child. I froze. The blood drained completely from my face, leaving my skin icy in the summer heat. A drug problem? I'm an ER nurse. I am drug-tested monthly. Nora nodded slowly, almost to herself, her eyes filling with sad understanding. That's good. That's real good. She turned back to her flowers without another word. The thick humidity stuck to my skin, but Nora's words cut way deeper. She had stayed totally silent for years because Linda convinced her that calling the authorities would mean sending Layla to an abusive foster care system instead of staying with a safe grandmother. I stumbled inside the house. Layla sat on the faded living room rug, watching cartoons entirely alone. The kitchen light was off. I flipped the switch and pulled open the pantry doors. A cheap box of store-brand cereal. 2 crushed packs of ramen noodles. Table salt. I ripped open the fridge. A carton of milk 4 days past its expiration date. 4 eggs. A plastic squeeze bottle of yellow ketchup. That was absolutely it. I stood there feeling sick to my stomach. I send $3,750 every single month. Look at this barren kitchen. Suddenly the front door swung wide open and my mother marched in, her arms full of plastic Target bags. I just went shopping. See, got everything we need. She unpacked with the frantic efficiency of an actor who had deeply rehearsed this exact scene. I watched her line a few cheap cans on the counter, trying desperately to quiet the screaming alarm bells in my head. Hours later, when the house was asleep, I dug through the kitchen trash. I found the crumpled Target receipt, $52.18 for the entire month, and as I smoothed out that crinkled piece of paper, a sickening realization gripped my throat. My mother wasn't just mismanaging my money, she was starving my daughter to feed a dark secret, and I was about to find out exactly how deep the rot went. Year 6, the year the blinders finally ripped off. I did something entirely out of character. I showed up without warning. I had swapped a grueling shift with another exhausted nurse and drove straight down the highway, fueled by a strange, gnawing dread. I arrived at my mother's house at exactly 6 o'clock on a Friday evening. The porch light was dead. The front door was unlocked, swinging open with a lazy push. Inside, the television flickered to a completely empty, shadowy room. Then I heard it, a tiny metallic sound, a fork scraping the bottom of a cheap ceramic bowl. My breath caught. Layla sat at the kitchen table in her faded pajamas. She was only 6 years old, sitting under a buzzing, flickering fluorescent light, eating instant noodles completely by herself. The rest of the house was tomb silent. "Hey, baby girl," I whispered, dropping my bags and kneeling onto the cold linoleum beside her chair. "Where's Grandma?" Layla didn't look up from her broth. "She went to Uncle Kyle's. She goes there a lot at night. My baby is sitting in the dark, chewing on cheap salt, while my brother drains her future." I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the 5th, agonizing ring. Her voice was strained, breathless. "Oh, I just ran over for a quick minute. Kyle needed help with a project. I'm coming right back." I sat rigidly on the lumpy sofa with Layla tucked safely into my lap, stroking her hair, and waited. My mother walked through that front door 3 hours and 12 minutes later. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her large leather purse hung wide open. I could see her wallet peeking out, visibly thinner than when I had seen it last. "What happened, Mom?" I asked, my tone dangerously flat. "Kyle had a rough night. He lost some cash. I had to calm him down." "Lost cash? How exactly?" She pressed her thin lips together, forming a hard line. "Just things. Don't worry about him. He's your flesh and blood." I glanced back at the kitchen, the empty bowl sitting in the sink, the crinkled plastic wrapper left on the counter. My little girl had prepared her own dinner while the woman I paid to protect her was out handing my hard-earned wages to a grown man. I carried Layla to her bedroom. As I gently tucked the paper-thin blanket around her small shoulders, she murmured something half asleep that sent absolute ice water flooding through my veins. "I don't want to go to Uncle Kyle's trailer anymore. It smells bad there." I sat frozen on the edge of that squeaky twin mattress for a very long time. "I wire you $45,000 a year," I thought, staring at the cracked ceiling. "And my child is living like an orphan." I brought it up the very next morning over breakfast. I said it plainly. No yelling, no wild accusations, just my exit plan. "Mom, I want to bring Layla up to Richmond with me. I will find a good daycare. I'll switch my schedule to day shifts. I can finally make this work." My mother was buttering a piece of burnt toast. The silver knife abruptly stopped moving. She didn't look up right away. But when she finally raised her head, the woman staring back at me wasn't the gentle widow who had brushed my hair after Mason's funeral. This creature had sharp edges, a predator cornered. "You're going to uproot that sweet child?" she hissed. "She has her school here, her little friends, her trusted doctor. I am her mother, a mother who has been forced to live 3 hours away, 5 nights a week, just to keep a roof over our heads." She set the butter knife down with a sharp, threatening click. A judge would see an unstable woman who was completely absent for 6 years, suddenly trying to rip a child away from the only stable, loving home she has ever known. The word landed against my cheek like a physical slap. "Judge, I'm just saying, if it ever comes to that," she added. She carefully folded her checkered dish towel once, twice, 3 times. Perfectly neat. Ice-cold control. "I've already talked to someone. You should know that." She didn't raise her voice a single decibel. She absolutely didn't need to. The horrible threat sat heavy between us, breathing like a third person sitting at the kitchen table. I understood her trap instantly. If I tried to pack Layla's bags today, my mother would drag me into a vicious court battle, and she held all the cards. 6 years of daily physical custody, a local mailing address, school enrollment records, a pediatrician on file, all listed strictly under her name. My name was only attached to a monthly bank transfer. That was it. I didn't fold and walk away because I was weak. I folded because my nursing brain did the brutal math. A bloody custody fight that I might lose would leave Layla permanently trapped with a woman who had just shown me exactly how evil she was willing to be to keep her hostage. I drove back up to Richmond with my hands violently shaking on the steering wheel, a single fiery thought burning a hole straight through my skull. "I will get you out, baby. I promise." For the next 2 painful years, I kept wiring the funds. I kept making the visits. I kept forcing a smile because I was secretly plotting. I just didn't know the master plan yet. Fast forward to June, year 8. Layla's 8th birthday. I drove down with the back seat completely full. A beautiful lavender dress, brand new sneakers, a thick stack of adventure books she had begged for during our video calls. I walked into the house excitedly, expecting at least a modest celebration. Instead, I found a cheap frozen sheet cake from the grocery store. $14.95 Discover. A few sad, half-inflated balloons taped lazily to the wall, and 0 guests. Not a single classmate, not one neighbor. Kyle was there, of course, wearing a crisp new polo shirt and a shining watch. He slumped in the recliner, furiously tapping on his smartphone, and didn't even bother to stand up. Layla came sprinting toward me. My heart violently cracked into 2 separate pieces at once, pure joy at feeling her tiny arms wrap around my neck, and sheer terror when I realized how dangerously light she felt in my embrace. She was wearing a heavy winter coat, in the middle of sweltering June. The main zipper was completely busted, and the right shoulder seam had torn apart, exposing the cheap white lining underneath. "Baby, where is the light jacket I sent the money for last month?" I asked, smoothing her hair. Layla just offered a tiny, helpless shrug. We sang a hollow rendition of Happy Birthday. My mother held up her cell phone to record the moment, beaming widely like a perfect grandmother with absolutely nothing to hide. Kyle shoveled 2 huge slices of cake into his mouth without making eye contact. Then, it happened. Layla pulled me away from the kitchen and into the narrow hallway. She tugged forcefully on my sleeve, gripping the fabric like she had been rehearsing this exact moment for weeks. She leaned up on her tiptoes. Her voice was barely a ghostly whisper. "Mommy, please don't send Grandma any more money. Just watch her. You'll see." I stared down at my only child, 8 years old, a pale, thin face, an oversized broken winter coat, eyes that held way too much dark knowledge for a little girl holding a floppy paper plate. "What do you mean, baby?" She shook her head frantically. "Just follow her tomorrow, please." From the kitchen, Kyle's gruff voice boomed out. "Ma, I need to talk to you later tonight. It's urgent." My mother nodded quickly, her eyes darting sideways to check if I had overheard them. I had, and I was staying 1 extra day. My 8-year-old daughter was acting like a seasoned detective to save me, and tomorrow morning, I was going to follow a trail of breadcrumbs straight into a nightmare. Now I need to pause the story right here for just a second. This part isn't exactly in the main timeline. It's just me looking you in the eye. When an 8-year-old child has to be the one protecting you, something in the universe has gone completely terribly wrong. Layla was only 8. She should have been dreaming about birthday wishes, chasing fireflies, and coloring outside the lines. She should never have been tracking where the household money was disappearing to in the middle of the night. So, let me ask you this. If a child you loved with your entire soul pulled you aside and told you to secretly follow someone you trusted completely, would you do it right away, or would you hesitate? Tell me honestly in the comments. I really want to know. Because I didn't wait a single second. Let me tell you exactly what happened the next morning. Saturday morning, I told my mother I had to head back to Richmond early for an emergency hospital shift. I hugged Layla tightly at the front door, burying my face in her hair. "I'm not leaving, baby," I whispered faintly into her ear. "I'll be close, I promise." I pulled out of the driveway, turned right at the stop sign, and immediately parked 3 houses down, hiding behind an old church van. Engine off, windows cracked just enough to let the muggy summer air in. I could see my mother's front door perfectly in the rearview mirror. What am I about to uncover? At exactly 10:15 a.m., she walked Layla down to the corner bus stop for summer Bible school, waved a cheerful goodbye, and casually strolled back inside. 15 minutes later, the front door opened again. She stepped out, clutching her heavy leather purse, got into her sedan, and headed east. I followed her, staying 3 car lengths back. My heart pounded against my ribs like a frantic drum. She didn't check her mirrors a single time. Why would she? Nobody in her entire life had ever dared to question her. We drove 25 minutes past the Family Dollar, past the old feed store, and down a winding gravel road I had never traveled before. And then, the trees cleared and I saw it. Kyle's trailer. Except, it didn't look like a rundown mobile home anymore. A brand new, expensive metal roof glared silver in the morning sun. A freshly built wooden deck wrapped around the front, complete with potted plants sitting neatly on the steps. And that charcoal truck, waxed and gleaming, was parked proudly next to a massive satellite dish. I paid for those planks, my brain screamed. I bought that roof with my exhausted tears. My mother went inside. I parked my car securely behind a thick stand of pine trees and held my breath. 38 agonizing minutes later, she walked back out. Kyle followed her down the steps to her car. She pulled a thick white envelope from her purse and handed it over. He stood right there in the bright sunlight, licked his thumb, and happily counted the crisp bills. He nodded, leaned in, kissed her cheek, and she drove away. But before the dust from her tires even settled back onto the gravel, a massive, lifted black SUV tore aggressively into the driveway, completely blocking Kyle's shiny truck. A giant man stepped out, thick neck, heavy leather jacket, eyes as dead as crushed coal. A debt collector, the kind of monster who didn't bother knocking. He lunged forward, grabbed Kyle firmly by the collar of his expensive new polo shirt, and violently slammed him against the chrome grille of the truck. I couldn't hear the vicious words being traded, but the violence was loud enough. Suddenly, my mother's sedan reversed wildly back up the driveway, tires screaming. She threw her door open, weeping hysterically. She dug wildly into the bottom of her purse and shoved a second massive roll of cash directly into the giant man's chest. The collector smirked, slowly counted the stack, dropped my brother into the dirt like an empty candy wrapper, and sped off into the trees. I stopped breathing. My mother's stolen money wasn't just funding a careless gambling habit. It was keeping my older brother from getting his legs snapped in half, and my starving daughter was the collateral damage. I didn't follow her car this time. Instead, I quietly walked the perimeter of that property. Around the back, near a rusty propane tank, a trash barrel was heavily overflowing. I didn't even have to dig. Casino receipts spilled over the rim like twisted confetti, dozens of them. Monthly printouts from a glowing slots parlor 50 miles south. My hands began shaking. Not from fear, from the kind of pure white-hot fury that has absolutely nowhere to go yet. I drove straight back to my mother's house. Her car wasn't in the driveway. She was probably at church now, building her fake saintly reputation one warm handshake at a time. I reached under the ceramic frog on the porch and grabbed the spare key. Same hiding spot since I was 13. The kitchen was somehow worse than the last time I checked. I ripped open every single cabinet door, cheap instant noodles, off-brand cornflakes, one dented can of green beans, and a jar of peanut butter scraped so clean the plastic sides reflected the light. The fridge held a half-empty gallon of milk and a sad squeeze bottle of yellow mustard. I send you enough to feed a village, I thought, my vision blurring. I walked slowly down the hallway and pushed Layla's bedroom door open. The bed was a lumpy twin mattress on a squeaky metal frame, the exact same faded comforter from 4 years ago. I opened her tiny closet. 7 or 8 thin items hung sadly on plastic hangers. I looked closer. Every single piece was printed with the exact same tiny tag. Glory Methodist Church. Free donated clothes. 3 pairs of shoes sat on the floor. 2 were sizes too small. 1 had the rubber sole peeling completely away from the toe. On the little wooden desk by the window, I found Layla's recent drawings. Crayons scribbled on cheap printer paper, a wobbly house, a yellow dog. I flipped through them, smiling faintly at first. Then I reached the very last page, 2 stick figures holding hands. The tall one had messy brown hair, the short one wore a triangle dress. Underneath the drawing, in shaky, heartbreaking second-grade letters, she had written, "I miss you, Mommy. When can I come home?" I collapsed onto my daughter's bed, pressed that crumpled paper against my chest, and cried. Not politely. The kind of raw, ugly sobbing that physically bends you in half. She thinks I chose to leave her. I wiped my wet face, determined to pack her things, and yanked open the desk drawer. Inside, I found something else. A folded official notice from the elementary school. I scanned the contact lines. Linda Dunn, but the roll didn't say grandmother, it said guardian. And scribbled onto the margin in my mother's familiar cursive was a terrifying number. $360,000. My own mother hadn't just stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. She had secretly crowned herself my child's legal guardian, and my daughter had drawn a picture of us holding hands because she truly believed it was the closest she would ever get to coming home. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, locked the front door behind me, and walked straight next door. Nora Kent opened her screen door before I could even raise my fist to knock, as if she'd been standing there for 8 years just waiting for me to wake up. Her kitchen smelled like sweet tea and lemon dish soap, a sharp contrast to the stale air of my mother's house. She poured me a cold glass without asking and sat heavily across the small table. "I've wanted to tell you for so long, Iris," she said, her voice trembling. "But your mother, she told every soul in this neighborhood that you had abandoned Layla. She told us you chose your career over your own flesh and blood." Nora turned her glass slowly on the tablecloth. "I didn't want to believe it, but I didn't know how to reach you. She made you sound like a ghost. Tell me everything, Nora, please." Nora took a shaky breath. "Kyle comes by 2-3 times every week. Every single time he leaves, his pockets are bulging with envelopes. I see the handoffs from my window, but that's not the worst part, Iris." She paused, her eyes filling with tears. "There have been nights, cold nights, where I've seen Layla sitting on that front porch alone after dark. 8, 9, 10 o'clock. One night, I went over and knocked. No one answered. I found her shivering on the steps. She just said Grandma went out. My stomach dropped into a bottomless pit of guilt. She was 5 years old, alone in the dark. I brought her inside," Nora continued. "I fed her a real sandwich, gave her some milk, and sat with her until your mother finally rolled into the driveway around midnight. Linda just thanked me and shut the door. The next morning she came over here and told me to mind my own business. She threatened me, Iris. Said if I called anyone, she'd tell the police I was the one neglecting the girl." Nora's voice cracked. "That child is not being cared for. She's being stored like an old box." I reached across the table and gripped Nora's hand. You fed my daughter when I wasn't there to do it. You don't ever apologize to me. Before I stood to leave, Nora said one more thing that chilled me to the bone. Your mother's been bragging to the church ladies. She says she's going to make things official with Layla soon. Something about paperwork. Paperwork. I already knew exactly what kind of trap she was setting. I sat in my car outside Nora's house, my knuckles turning white as I gripped the steering wheel. Suddenly my phone buzzed, an unknown number from the local area code. Iris Evans? A stern professional voice asked. This is Miss Harper, the school counselor at Willow Creek. I had to hire a private investigator just to track down your direct hospital line. Your mother has been lying to us for years. My heart stopped beating. Lying about what? Layla passed out in gym class yesterday morning. Severe caloric deficiency, Iris. When I told your mother I was calling Child Protective Services, she looked me in the eye and claimed you were serving time in a federal prison. Is this true? No, I screamed into the phone. I'm a nurse. I'm in Richmond working double shifts to pay for her life. Iris, Ms. Harper's voice softened with a terrifying urgency. If you don't step in right this second, CPS will take her by Friday. Your mother is filing for emergency guardianship to block the state, claiming you've legally abandoned the child. And Iris, I ran a background check to verify her claims. There is a $25,000 maxed-out credit card opened in your name, mailed to your mother's address. She didn't just steal your cash, she stole your very identity. I hung up and called the county courthouse immediately. My hands were steady, my voice professional. 8 years of trauma nursing had taught me how to stay calm while the world was bleeding out. Good afternoon. My name is Iris Evans. I'm calling to inquire about any active filings regarding my minor daughter, Layla Evans. Hold music. 2 minutes of silence that felt like 2 centuries. The clerk came back on the line. Yes, ma'am. We have a petition for temporary guardianship filed by Alinda Dunn. The petitioner states the mother is frequently absent and that the child has been in the petitioner's primary care since infancy. The words hit me like physical blows. Absent since infancy. What's the status? I managed to whisper. It's pending. No hearing date yet, but if you don't object, it moves to final review within 45 days. I thanked the clerk and hung up. I sat in that car for 20 minutes, staring at the ceramic frog on the porch. My mother hadn't just stolen $360,000. She had used my own sacrifice, the hours I spent away from Layla to earn that money, as the very weapon to take her away from me forever. She had listed my gambling addict brother as a supporting household member. Kyle, a man who couldn't even keep a job, would have legal rights to my daughter. She wasn't just stealing my money anymore. She was stealing my child's future. And she had been building the gallows for 8 long years while I smiled and sent the checks. I drove back to Richmond that night through a blinding thunderstorm. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. The pure, white-hot anger was doing what caffeine never could. It was keeping me perfectly, dangerously awake. But I didn't call my mother to scream. I didn't confront Kyle. I didn't do a single thing that would tip them off. 8 years of nursing teaches you a vital lesson. You never rush a critical patient. You assess the damage. You build a plan. Then, you act with surgical precision. Week 1, I walked into my nurse manager's office and requested a permanent switch to day shifts. She looked at my file. 8 years, never late, never a single complaint, and signed the papers that afternoon. Start date, 4 weeks out. Week 2. I found a sun-drenched 2-bedroom apartment exactly 18 minutes from Willow Creek Elementary, one of the top-rated schools in Richmond. I paid the first month's rent and the deposit, signing the lease on a Friday afternoon. My hand didn't shake once. Week 3. I called a powerhouse family law attorney named Jessica Foster. I laid it all out. The $360,000, the empty fridge, the midnight visits to Kyle's trailer, the pending guardianship petition, the CPS threat, and the stolen identity. Jessica listened in a silence so thick I could hear her pen scratching on legal pads. You are the biological mother, Iris, she said firmly. You have never been found unfit. Your rights have never been terminated. That petition hasn't been granted yet. As of this second, you have full legal authority to take your daughter home. What about the guardianship? I asked, my heart racing. File a formal objection. I'll handle the paperwork. But frankly, once you have physical custody and a stable, documented home, that petition will die on the vine. I enrolled Layla at Willow Creek. I submitted every transfer form. I set up an appointment with Dr. Ford, a pediatrician just 3 miles from our new apartment. Everything was in writing. Everything was documented. I wasn't just building a legal case, I was building a fortress. But I didn't stop the monthly wire transfers. Not yet. $3,750 went out on the 1st, right on schedule. My mother needed to believe the bank was still open and the vault was full. Labor Day weekend was 4 weeks away. 2 weeks before the holiday, I drove down on a Friday and told my mother I wanted to take Layla for a girls' day in Chesapeake. Shopping, ice cream, maybe a museum. Fine, she said, barely looking up from her crossword puzzle. Have her back by 7, she needs her rest. I didn't take her shopping. I took Layla to see Dr. Ford. The examination room was bright and smelled like peppermint. Layla sat on the table, the crinkly paper rustling under her legs as she kicked them back and forth. Dr. Ford was gentle. She asked Layla about school, her favorite color, and what she usually ate for breakfast. Cereal, Layla said softly. I always eat cereal, sometimes with water if the milk is sour. Dr. Ford weighed her. She measured her. She checked her growth chart. Then she turned to me with that specific, grave expression medical professionals use when the news is bad. Layla is 10 pounds underweight for her age group, Iris. She's missing 2 vital vaccinations, the Hep B and polio boosters that should have happened last year. She has 2 deep, untreated cavities. Her skin is dangerously dry, consistent with major dietary gaps. She wrote it all down. Every word became an official medical record. This child isn't just skinny, Dr. Ford said. She is medically neglected. Whoever is her primary caregiver is failing her on every basic level. On the drive back, Layla sat in the back seat licking a chocolate ice cream cone. I watched her in the rearview mirror, my chest aching. Baby, I asked gently, does Grandma ever take you to the doctor? No, Layla whispered. She says doctors cost too much money. $45,000 a year, and my daughter hadn't seen a dentist in 4 years. Then Layla said the words that turned the ice in my veins into a roaring fire. Mommy, Grandma told my teacher that you don't want me anymore. She said you forgot about me. That's not true, right? I pulled the car over immediately. I turned around and looked her straight in her beautiful, frightened eyes. That will never be true, Layla. Not ever. I have been working every single day just to get back to you. The phone call came that Thursday. My mother's voice was bright and cheerful, like a Saturday morning. Labor Day cookout at my place. The whole family's coming. Paula, Diane, Richard, all the cousins. Bring something nice to wear, Iris. I want us to look like a real family. I'll be there, Mom, I said, my voice as smooth as glass. Wonderful. And Iris, don't bring up anything heavy, okay? It's a holiday. Let's just enjoy the performance. I told her I couldn't wait. I hung up and opened my closet. This was it. Every year my mother staged Labor Day like a Broadway play. Flags in the yard, ribs on the grill, sweet tea in mason jars. 25 relatives would gather, and she would move through them like a queen. She had built her entire reputation on my money and my absence. She expected me to sit there, smile, and applaud her sacrifice. That week, I went to the office supply store. I printed 5 photographs on high-gloss paper. The barren kitchen cabinets, Layla's closet of church-donated rags, Kyle's renovated trailer, and his gleaming truck. I printed a copy of the guardianship petition she thought I'd never see, and I printed the credit card statements. $25,000 of Kyle's gambling debts, bought with my stolen name. I tucked them into a manila envelope and hid it in my overnight bag. Then, I called Kyle. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail. I hope you'll be at the cookout, Kyle. It's time we all had a little talk about where the money goes. I knew he'd be there. My mother wouldn't miss her chance to show off her golden boy while my daughter starved in the shadows. I arrived Saturday afternoon, just 24 hours before the big show. My mother was already in full production mode, marinating stacks of ribs, arranging lawn chairs in perfect rows, and ironing a crisp white tablecloth. She barely glanced at me when I walked through the door. Mom, I want to take Layla to dinner tonight, I said, keeping my voice casual. Just the 2 of us. We'll stay at the motel on Route 9 and be back by morning. She frowned, her eyes scanning her crossword puzzle. Don't keep her up too late, Iris. She needs to look healthy and nice for the cookout. First impressions for the family matter. Look nice with what clothes? I bit my tongue. Not yet. I drove Layla to a small diner 4 miles up the road. It had red vinyl booths, laminated menus, and an old jukebox playing soft country songs. Layla ordered a cheeseburger, extra fries, and a thick chocolate milkshake. She ate every single bite, mopping up the last of the ketchup with a stray fry. My heart twisted. Baby, I said, leaning across the table, Can you tell me more about what Grandma does when I'm not here? Layla stirred her milkshake, her voice flat and observational, the way children speak when they've seen too much. Grandma gives Uncle Kyle money a lot. He comes over, they argue in the kitchen, and then she gives him an envelope. Sometimes she cries after he leaves. She tells me not to tell you. She says it's our secret. And what do you eat for dinner most nights? Cereal. Sometimes Nora brings me a real plate of food through the fence. She says I'm her favorite neighbor. Does Grandma ever talk about me? Layla looked down at her empty plate, her voice dropping to a whisper. She says you're too busy to want me. She says I should start calling her Mama because you're never coming back for good. A long pause followed. Then she looked up with tears in her eyes. I don't want to, Mommy. I don't want to call her that. I reached across the table and gripped both of her small, cold hands. After tomorrow you are coming home with me. For good. I promise. Her eyes went wide, filled with a cautious, fragile hope. Promise? I promise. But baby, are you scared I'm going to fight with Grandma? No, she whispered, a strange strength entering her voice. I just want you to tell the truth. The next day was Labor Day. High noon. The sun was baking the red clay soil, and the cicadas were screaming from the trees. My mother's yard looked like a perfect postcard. American flags on wooden stakes, a long table draped in checkered cloth. The grill hissed with expensive meat. Coolers of sweet tea and beer sweated in the shade. Everything was staged to perfection. The relatives arrived in clusters. Aunt Paula came first, 68 years old, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. She hugged my mother and looked around the yard, nodding like a woman inspecting a job well done. Uncle Richard followed, quiet as always, his ball cap low. Then came Aunt Diane, Linda's younger sister and her fiercest defender. She arrived with a bundt cake and a voice that echoed across the neighborhood. Cousins and kids filed in after them, 25 people in all, settling into lawn chairs. My mother moved through the crowd like a queen. She held Layla's hand and introduced her to everyone as if she were a trophy. Y'all know my grandbaby. I've been raising her since she was a tiny thing. 8 long years of sacrifice. A chorus of praise followed her. You're a saint, Linda. That child is so lucky to have you. Kyle arrived last. He wore aviator sunglasses and a brand new polo shirt. He grabbed a beer and leaned against the fence, avoiding eye contact with anyone. I walked into the yard wearing a clean blouse, my overnight bag over my shoulder. The manila envelope was tucked safely inside, a ticking time bomb. The cookout went on as usual. People laughed and ate. Kids chased each other around the big oak tree. My mother refilled glasses and collected compliments like a banker making deposits. I sat and watched Layla. She was eating more than any other child there. Her 4th rib, a 3rd helping of potato salad, a full ear of corn. Kyle was on his 5th beer when Cousin Dustin leaned over. Kev, you still at that shop? Kyle waved his bottle dismissively. Nah, I quit, didn't need the stress. Dustin laughed, confused. Must be nice. How you paying for that charcoal truck in the drive then? Kyle's eyes flicked to our mother for a split second. Odd jobs, he mumbled. Linda cut in, smooth as butter. He's finally getting back on his feet, Dustin. Leave him be. Aunt Paula looked at the truck, then at Kyle, then back at the table. She said nothing, but I saw her jaw tighten. Then, the first crack in the performance happened. Paula was watching Layla eat with a strange intensity. She leaned over to Diane and spoke loud enough for half the table to hear. Lord, that child eats like she hasn't seen a hot meal in a month. My mother let out a bright, fake laugh. Oh, she just loves her grandma's BBQ. But Layla looked up, barbecue sauce on her chin, and said in a small, clear voice that carried across the entire yard. Mommy, this is the most food I've eaten in a long, long time. The table didn't go silent immediately, but the air suddenly felt thin. Aunt Paula looked at me, her eyes asking a question. I answered with the slightest, slowest nod of my head. Kyle, loose from the beer, threw his arm over his chair and grinned. Life's good, man. Ma takes care of everything for us. I checked my watch. The sun was at its peak. The family was watching. It was time to rip the curtain down. The plates were mostly empty, scattered with bones and crumpled napkins. The adults sat in that heavy post-meal haze, soaking in the sun and the sweet tea. My mother stood up, smoothing her apron. This was the moment she lived for, the closing act. I just want to thank everyone for being here, she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. Family is everything to me. And this little one, she reached out to pat Layla's head, but Layla was already tucked into my side, clutching my arm. She's my whole world. I've given up everything. My retirement, my quiet years, just to raise her right. I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. A chorus of "You're a saint, Linda," drifted from the cousins. I felt Layla's fingers tighten on my skin, her small body trembling. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the grass, a sharp, jarring sound in the quiet yard. "Mom, I appreciate you saying that," I said, my voice cutting through the heat like a cold blade. "And I think everyone here deserves to know exactly what giving up everything actually looked like for the last 8 years. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aunt Diane straightened in her chair. My mother let out a small, nervous laugh. "Iris, honey, what are you?" I reached into my bag and set the manila envelope in the center of the checkered tablecloth. I opened the flap. "For 8 years, I have sent Mom $3,750 every single month. That's $45,000 a year. A total of $360,000. The number moved through the relatives like an electric current. Paula's hand went to her mouth. Uncle Richard pulled his cap off and leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I want to show everyone where that money went," I said. My mother's hand lunged for the envelope, but I placed my palm flat on top of it. "Not yet, Mom." Her hand retreated, and for the first time in my life, I saw the mask slip. Underneath was a woman terrified of the light. I pulled out the first photo. I slid it across the table to Aunt Paula. "This is Mom's kitchen last month. Open the cabinets. Ramen, cheap cereal, and table salt. A refrigerator with nothing but spoiled milk and a bottle of mustard. This is what my daughter eats while I'm at the hospital." Diane leaned in, her face pale. "Linda, is this true?" I didn't wait for her to lie. I pulled out the second photo. Layla's closet. "These are donated clothes from the Glory Methodist Free Closet. Look at the tags. Look at the shoes with the soles peeling off. I sent enough money to buy her a new wardrobe every month. Where did it go?" I kept my voice level. No screaming, no tears, just the cold, hard facts. Paula pressed both palms to the table, her eyes darting from the photo to my mother. Third photo, Kyle's trailer. The silver roof, the deck, the charcoal truck. This is Kyle's place. A new roof, a new deck, and a $50,000 truck parked in the drive. Kyle hasn't had a job in 2 years. I think everyone here can connect those dots. Aunt Paula looked at Kyle. Kyle looked at the grass, his face turning a deep, guilty crimson. "But that's not the best part," I said, my voice dropping an octave. I pulled out the court petition. "This is the legal filing my mother submitted to the county. She's trying to take permanent guardianship of my daughter. She's claiming I abandoned Layla, the very absence she created by taking my money, so I had to keep working. And here is the final piece." I slammed the credit card statements onto the table. A $25,000 credit card opened in my name, by my mother, maxed out at the slots parlor to pay off the debt collectors who were coming to break Kyle's legs. She didn't just starve my child, she stole my identity to keep her golden boy from the consequences of his own life. The yard erupted. Not in shouting, but in a chaotic, buzzing energy. My mother shot to her feet, her face contorted. "You're twisting it. You weren't here. I was the one doing the work." Kyle shoved his chair back, it toppled into the grass. "This is bull." "Sit down, Kyle." Aunt Paula's voice was like a whip. She turned to my mother. "Linda, that truck is brand new. Where did the money come from?" "He worked for it," Linda screamed. Kyle opened his mouth to agree, but then he looked at the photos, then at the relatives staring at him like he was a thief. He stayed silent. My mother did what she always did when the truth cornered her. She wept, huge, gasping sobs. "You don't know what it's been like. Kyle needed me. He was going to end up on the streets. I'm a mother. I had to help him." Aunt Paula didn't flinch. "You helped him with your granddaughter's food money, Linda. You fed a grown man's addiction while that baby wore rags." Diane, who had been my mother's shield for decades, was staring at the photo of the empty fridge. Her voice was a whisper. "Linda, she's skin and bones." My mother turned to the only person she thought she still owned. She knelt in the grass and grabbed Layla's hand. "Tell them, Layla. Tell them Grandma takes care of you. You love Grandma, don't you?" Layla didn't pull away. She stood there, one hand in mine and one in the hand of the woman who had betrayed us. She looked at the 25 faces watching her. Then, she looked her grandmother in the eye. "I'm always hungry, Grandma," Layla said. "And I'm tired of being a secret." The silence that followed was absolute. Kyle didn't say another word. He just walked to his truck and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying the porch. My mother sat back on her heels, the sobbing stopping instantly. She looked around the table, searching for one ally, one face that would tell her she was right. There wasn't a single one. "We're going inside to pack," I said, gripping Layla's hand. "And if anyone tries to stop us, the next call I make isn't to a lawyer, it's to the police." The heavy front door clicked shut behind us, cutting off the suffocating heat of the yard and the stunned murmurs of my relatives. Inside, the house felt like a hollow shell, a stage where the play had finally ended. We didn't waste a single second. I walked straight to Layla's room, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Pack your favorites, baby," I whispered. "Only what matters." We didn't take much. It all fit into one small, battered suitcase and a single brown grocery bag, 8 years of a childhood, and it barely filled a trunk. Layla walked over to her little desk and picked up that drawing, the one with the 2 stick figures holding hands under a lonely sun. She tucked it under her arm like it was made of solid gold. As we walked back out onto the porch, the yard was a graveyard of half-eaten ribs and abandoned tea. Nora Kent stood at her fence line, her hand raised in a silent, solemn salute. "You take care of that baby, Iris," she called out, her voice thick with relief. "She's finally where she belongs." I buckled Layla into the back seat. She looked up at me, her eyes wider and brighter than I had seen them in years. "Mommy, can we get milkshakes on the way home? Real ones?" I let out a laugh, the first real, honest laugh to leave my lungs in a decade. "We can get whatever you want, Layla. We're going home." The 3-hour drive back to Richmond felt like a victory lap. 40 minutes in, Layla fell fast asleep, the milkshake cup still clutched in her hand and her drawing tucked under her arm like a teddy bear. For the first time, she wasn't sleeping in a house of secrets, she was sleeping in the safety of the truth. But as we crossed the county line, my phone began to scream. First, a text from Aunt Paula. "We had a long talk with Linda after you left. She finally broke. She admitted to giving Kyle almost every cent. Diane is furious. None of us are speaking to him. You did the right thing, Iris. We are so sorry we didn't see it." Then a call from Uncle Richard. I took it on speaker, my eyes fixed on the road. "Iris," his deep voice rumbled, "if you need a character reference for court, or for the school, or for anyone, you call me. I saw those photos. I won't let her lie about you again." Finally, a message from Aunt Diane, the woman who had spent years defending my mother's sacrifice. Her text was short and jagged. "I owe you an apology. I believed her stories. I should have checked on the child myself. Please forgive me." I didn't reply. Not yet. I just kept driving. My mother's calls started around 10 p.m., 12 missed calls before midnight. I watched the screen glow in the dark car and let it go to voicemail every single time. Then came the texts, a desperate sequence that showed the slow crumbling of her empire. 11:14 p.m. "You're destroying this family. I hope you're happy with yourself." 11:31 p.m. "I need to see Layla. You can't just take her." 11:58 p.m. "Please, Iris, talk to me." 12:22 a.m. "You can't do this to me. I'm her mother now." I pulled into our new apartment complex at 12:30 a.m. I carried my sleeping daughter up the stairs, her head heavy on my shoulder, and laid her in the bed I had bought 3 weeks prior. It had a new mattress, soft lavender sheets, and a comforter covered in butterflies. I sat at my small kitchen table in the dark and typed one single reply to my mother. "When you are ready to be honest, truly, painfully honest about what you did and why you let my daughter go hungry while Kyle bought a truck, we can talk. Until then, Layla is home. Don't call again." I hit send and turned the phone off. I sat in the silence of my own home, listening to the steady, rhythmic breathing of my daughter in the next room. 3 weeks later, Kyle called. His voice was tight, high-pitched, and cornered. "You ruined everything, Iris. Mom is a mess. The family won't even look at me. And the collectors, they're looking for me again. I have nowhere to go." "Kyle," I said, my voice as cold as a winter morning, "you took food money from an 8-year-old girl. You watched her eat ramen while you waxed a truck. You're not a victim. Ma gave it to me. I didn't steal it." "You're right," I replied. "She gave it to you. And that makes both of you monsters. Goodbye, Kyle." I hung up. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. He was my big brother. We used to catch crawdads in the creek together. He used to carry me on his back when the sun got too hot. But that brother was dead. In his place was a man who let his niece starve so he could pull a lever at a slot machine. The money was gone, $360,000 of my life's work. But the cage was finally open. My mother was sorry because she got caught, but I was finally free because I fought back. And the best part? The best part was yet to come. 3 months after that fiery Labor Day afternoon, October arrived with a crisp golden chill. It was the first day at Willow Creek Elementary. Layla stood on our new front porch wearing the lavender dress I'd bought for her birthday, the one my mother had hidden in a closet. She had a backpack with a butterfly zipper pull and brand new sneakers that actually fit her feet. She stood on the school steps, squinting into the morning sun, and waved at me until my car was just a tiny speck at the end of the drop-off line. For the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel like I was abandoning her. I felt like I was launching her. By the end of the week, her teacher emailed me. Me, not my mother. Layla is settling in wonderfully, Miss Evans. She's already made 2 best friends and she spends every free second in the reading corner. She told me today that her favorite thing about school is that she gets to go home to her mommy every single day. I read that email 6 times until the words blurred behind my tears. By November, the change was physical. Layla had gained 12 pounds. Dr. Ford said her growth chart was finally trending toward a healthy, normal curve. Her vaccinations were up to date, her cavities were filled, and her skin lost that grayish, dry tint. She looked flushed and soft, the way a child looks when they eat 3 warm meals a day and sleep without one ear pressed to the door, listening for a grandmother to come home. I worked the day shift now. I clocked out at 4:15 and pulled into the school lot at 4:30. We cooked dinner together every night. Nothing fancy, spaghetti, tacos, homemade pizza, but it was real food, hot food, food that didn't come out of a crinkled foil packet. She loved stirring the sauce, standing on her little step stool, acting like a tiny chef. She was very particular about the garlic, just like Mason used to be. She drew a new picture and taped it to our refrigerator herself. 2 stick figures again, but this time they were inside a bright yellow house with a table full of food and a massive, smiling sun in every window. At the bottom, in steady, confident handwriting, she wrote, "Me and Mommy at home." I stood in front of that fridge, looking at the milk, the eggs, the fresh fruit, and the meat for tomorrow's dinner. This, I thought, is what $45,000 a year was supposed to look like. One rainy evening in December, Layla looked up from her math homework. "Mommy, can Grandma visit sometime? Not to stay, just to see me?" I paused, my heart tight. My daughter didn't hate her grandmother, even after the hunger and the rags. Children have a capacity for grace that adults lose somewhere along the way. "Maybe someday, baby," I said softly, "when things are a little better." 7 months after the cookout, I finally agreed to a meeting. Not at my house, not at hers, a public park in Richmond on a Saturday afternoon. Linda arrived in a car I didn't recognize, an older, smaller model. She looked different, thinner. Gray roots were showing through her dye, and her expensive nail polish was gone. Underneath the performance was just a 64-year-old woman who had finally run out of money and excuses. She saw Layla and stopped dead. Her chin began to tremble. "Layla, hi baby." Layla ran to her and hugged her. My mother crouched down and held her so tightly I thought she might never let go. But it was different now. Layla hugged her the way you hug a distant relative at a funeral. Warm and kind, but already looking over her shoulder at the swings. She wasn't looking to Linda for safety anymore. She was looking at me. My mother walked over to the bench where I sat. She sat down heavily, watching Layla pump her legs on the swing set. "She looks healthy, Iris," she whispered. "She looks so happy." "She is," I said, my voice firm. "I'm sorry," Linda said, her voice cracking. "I know I've said it 1,000 times, but I mean it now. I see what I did." "Sorry doesn't refill 8 years of empty plates, Mom," I said, looking her in the eye. "So here is how this works. You visit when I say you can. You never take her anywhere alone. And if you ever for a single second put Kyle's needs above Layla's again, this door slams shut forever. Do you understand?" She didn't argue. She didn't cry for sympathy. She just nodded. We sat on that bench for an hour in the cold wind, watching Layla go higher and higher on the swings. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a boundary, clear, unbreakable, and built entirely out of the love I had for the girl who saved me. 1 year after the cookout, Labor Day came around again. There was no big gathering, no flags, no staged speeches, just me and Layla on the tiny balcony of our Richmond apartment, grilling hot dogs on a small electric grill. She's 9 now. She's grown 5 inches. She reads thick chapter books and argues about her 8:30 bedtime with the fiery confidence of a child who knows she is loved. I was promoted to charge nurse in April. Better pay, steadier hours, and a name badge with a title I earned through 8 years of sacrifice and peanut butter sandwiches. Kyle is still in a state-mandated gambling program. He works in a warehouse now, hauling boxes. He sent Layla a birthday card in June. There was no money inside, just a card with purple butterflies and his name signed at the bottom. I let her keep it. She pinned it to her corkboard next to an A+ spelling test. I lost $360,000, but the real cost was the 8 years of drawings I never saw, the meals she never had, and the nights she spent shivering on a porch waiting for a grandmother who was off paying a bookie. I can never get those years back, but I learned the most important lesson of my life. The moment your child has to protect you instead of the other way around, the world is broken. And fixing it doesn't always require a loud explosion. Sometimes it just requires standing up calmly and telling the truth until the lies run out of breath. Saturday night in our kitchen. Layla is stirring the spaghetti sauce, her face tight with focus. The apartment smells like oregano, garlic, and the specific quiet warmth of a home where people actually live. The fridge hums peacefully behind me. Full. Safe. Layla sets the spoon down and grins at me. "Mommy? Milkshakes after dinner?" "It's Saturday," I smile. "Of course." My phone buzzes, a text from Linda. Can I call her to say goodnight? I look at my daughter. "Grandma wants to say goodnight. You want to talk to her?" Layla nods. "Yeah, just for a minute." I dial the number and hand her the phone. "Hi, Grandma. I made an A on my science project." Through the speaker, I hear my mother's voice. Smaller, humbler, older. "That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you." I listen from across the room, leaning against the counter. I'm not warm and I'm not cold. I'm just present. I am the guard at the gate. Some people say blood is thicker than water. Maybe they're right. But I've learned that boundaries are thicker than blood. And my daughter was the one who taught me how to draw the line. If you've walked this path with me to the very end, thank you. Telling this truth was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But there is a profound healing in sharing stories that are this raw and real. We all face moments where the dark feels overwhelming, and hearing how someone else finally found the light can make all the difference. If our journey to freedom moved you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. By staying connected, you help ensure these deep, powerful stories keep finding the people who need them most. Take care of yourselves, and remember to always protect your peace.